Last Christmas. The snow fell so thickly that the entire university campus seemed wrapped in a silent white blanket. The decorative lights strung along the main pathway flickered in warm hues, but I was cold. Not because of the Wisconsin winter wind slipping through my collar, but because Holden had said goodbye to me right under the massive Christmas tree in front of the Central Library. My name is Franklin, and I loved him more than I dared to admit. I remember clearly how Holden stood in front of me that day, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his gray wool coat, shoulders tense, eyes avoiding mine. He was always like that when he was about to say something hurtful. Holden was a bit taller than me, studying engineering, once the star of the freshman football team before a knee injury forced him off the field. I was studying American literature, living on words, on emotions. The things Holden always said were too much. Frank, I don't think we should continue anymore. Those words still cut like shards of glass in my chest even now. I laughed. A stupid laugh, the kind people use when they haven't yet realized their heart has just been crushed. I asked why, even though my mind had already guessed 100 reasons. Holden talked about family pressure, about how he wasn't ready, about the uncertain future after his injury, and the sentence I hated most. You deserve someone who doesn't hesitate like I do. That Christmas, I didn't go home. I stayed in the nearly empty dorm, listening to the wind howl through the window frames, drinking cold coffee and wondering where I'd gone wrong. I hated Christmas trees, hated Christmas music, hated the smell of cinnamon and hot chocolate. Everything reminded me of Holden. After the break, Holden moved out of my dorm area. He vanished from my life as neatly as erasing a wrong line in a manuscript. No texts, no greetings, no further explanations. I thought maybe that's for the best. A year passed. I learned to live without Holden. I went on dates. A few nice, polite guys, none who hurt me, but none who made my heart skip a beat either. I became a teaching assistant for the modern literature professor, wrote more, and stopped looking toward the stadium every Friday afternoon. Then Christmas came again. The campus lit up once more, as if last year had never happened. I was standing in the small coffee shop across from the humanities building, where I often sat to write, when the door swung open, the bell jingling, bringing in a gust of cold wind, and Holden. I recognized him immediately, even though he'd changed. Hair cut shorter, face thinner, but his eyes were the same. Eyes that once made me believe I was the surest thing in his life. My heart tightened. Holden froze when he saw me. In that moment I understood. He hadn't expected to run into me here. He approached slowly, as if each step was a difficult decision. Franklin! He called my name, his voice deeper than before. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I just looked at him, letting him see that some wounds don't disappear just because of time.
Ulden, Raplia.
Calmly, to my own surprise, we talked about trivial things. Classes, the weather, how he'd transferred schools for a semester and come back. But neither of us touched the real thing between us. A shattered Christmas. A breakup that had never been closed. Before leaving, Holden paused by my table. Frank, he said, this time looking straight into my eyes. Could I invite you for a walk tonight? Just to talk. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse, to slam the door on the past. But the other part, the weakest one, nodded. Just to talk, I emphasized. Holden nodded, but his eyes held something else. Something that unsettled me. Something that reminded me Christmas didn't just bring pain, but also unspoken promises. I had no idea that that evening, Holden would ask me a question that would upend everything I tried to build over the past year. We met at 7 in the evening, in front of the old dorm building where I'd lived as a freshman. Snow was falling lightly, not as heavy as last year, but enough to dust a thin layer on Holden's shoulders as he waited for me. The scene gave me a strange feeling, as if time had folded in on itself, as if that painful year had just been a long nightmare. We walked side by side, not touching. The stone-paved path led out to Lake Mendota, empty of people, with only the yellow lights stretching our shadows on the snow. I could hear my footsteps clearly, and my heartbeat. Unsteady, not as obedient as I'd thought. I'm sorry, Holden said, breaking the silence. I didn't respond right away. I'd waited for those words for a year. And when they came, I realized apologies don't always work like people think. Sorry for what? I asked, my voice even. Holden stopped. He turned to me, his brows furrowed, the familiar expression when he had to face real emotions. For leaving without explaining. For hurting you. For being a coward. The wind blew harder. I pulled my collar up, not because I was cold. Do you know what I did last Christmas? I asked. Holden shook his head. I sat alone in my dorm room, drank coffee until I couldn't sleep, wondered every 10 minutes if you'd text. And then I hated myself for expecting it. Holden swallowed hard. I saw his throat move. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said softly. I just want you to know I never stopped thinking about you. Those words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I turned away, looking out at the frozen lake, where the moonlight reflected faintly. So why did you come back? I asked. Don't say it's for nostalgia. Holden was silent for a long time. So long I thought he wouldn't answer. Because I lost everything I once thought was important, he said. The injury, football, family expectations. And when I had nothing left to hold on to, I realized the only person I truly loved. I let out a soft laugh. Not a happy one. Holden, you can't just disappear and come back saying things like that, I said. I'm not a comma in your life. I know, he replied immediately. And I'm not here to ask you to come back. At least, not right away. We kept walking. The snow started falling thicker, sticking to my hair. I thought about evenings before, when Holden would drag me out for walks like this, his hand always finding mine like a reflex. Tonight, no. He kept his distance, as if afraid to break something fragile. How have you been living this past year? Holden asked. I've lived, I replied. Studied, wrote, dated, tried to forget. Have you loved anyone? He asked, hesitating slightly. Yes, I lied. Not entirely, but not entirely true either. Holden nodded, accepting the answer like a necessary punishment. When we reached the small wooden bridge leading to the lake shore, Holden stopped. He took a deep breath, like someone about to jump into cold water. Franklin, he called my full name, seriously enough that I had to turn and look. I'm not back just to apologize, he said. I'm back because I know I was wrong to leave you, and because I don't want to live another year without saying this. I felt unease rising. I knew this moment was coming, and I was afraid of it. What? I asked. Holden reached into his coat pocket. In that instant, all my senses stretched taut. I thought of proposal stories people tell. But then I reminded myself, don't be stupid. Holden pulled out a small black box, simple. He didn't kneel, just stood there, hand trembling slightly. I don't expect you to say yes, he said quickly, as if afraid I'd interrupt. I just want you to know that, if there's a future, I want it to be with you. He opened the box. Inside was a silver ring, not ornate, but shining under the light. I felt my throat tighten. Franklin, Holden said, his voice breaking, will you marry me? The world around me seemed to freeze. Snow falling, the lake silent, and my heart, the one I'd tried to patch up for a year, began to crack again, in a completely different way. I didn't answer right away. The ring in Holden's hand seemed to shine more than necessary, even though the lights on the wooden bridge were dim. I looked at it, then up at his face, the face of the person who'd once left me without looking back, now trembling, waiting for an answer that could decide the rest of his life. You're crazy, I said softly. Holden didn't argue. He just nodded, as if it were obvious. Maybe, he said, but I've never been surer about anything. I turned away, walking a few steps to the bridge railing, gripping the cold wood. I needed distance. I needed air. In my mind, memories mixed with the present. Holden laughing with me in the freshman dorm room, Holden turning his back under the Christmas tree, and Holden now, standing there with a ring and a promise too big. Do you know what proposing to someone means? I asked without turning. It's not a way to make amends, not a leap to erase what you've done. I know, Holden replied, his voice firmer. And I'm not doing this to erase the past. I'm doing it because I'm ready to take responsibility for it. I turned back to look at him. For the first time that night, I saw Holden not avoiding, not bowing his head, not blaming circumstances. He stood tall, though his hands still shook. "What about your family?" I asked. "They never accepted me. They didn't even know we were." "They know," Holden interrupted. "I told them. This spring." I was stunned. "And?" I asked. "It wasn't easy," he admitted. "There were arguments. Silence. But I didn't back down. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. Part of me wanted to believe. The other part was tired from believing too many times. "I've rebuilt my life," I said. "Without you. Do you understand that? I've learned not to need you anymore." Holden took a step forward, then stopped, respecting the distance I'd unconsciously created. "I don't want you to need me," he said. "I want you to choose me. When you're ready." I closed my eyes. The wind blew strong, carrying the scent of snow and damp wood. I thought about the past year, about evenings I wrote until exhaustion, about bland dates, about the emptiness no one could fill. I'd lived, but I'd never felt whole. "When you left," I said, my voice trembling though I hated it, "I thought it was because I wasn't enough, not good enough, not strong enough for you to stay." Holden shook his head, his eyes reddening. "No," he said, "it was me who wasn't brave enough. And I've hated myself for it every day." We stood there for a long time. No one spoke. Finally, I stepped closer, slowly. Holden held his breath as I reached out, not to touch the ring, but to place my hand on his chest. "I can't say yes," I said. "Not tonight." I saw the hope in Holden's eyes flicker out, then pause, as if he was trying not to collapse. "But," I continued, "I won't say no either." Holden exhaled, a shaky breath. "I don't need an answer right now," he said. "I just need a chance." I nodded. "One chance. Nothing more." He closed the ring box, pocketing it. "No forcing. No clinging." That strangely made me feel lighter. We walked back to campus in silence. At the fork in the path, Holden stopped. "Frank," he said, "whatever happens, thank you for not turning your back." I looked at him, the boy who'd once shattered my heart, now standing before me with a vulnerability I'd never seen. "This Christmas," I said, "don't disappear." "I promise," Holden replied. "If you'll let me." I didn't answer, but I didn't leave right away. And sometimes that's an answer in itself. The days after that, the campus seemed to shift into a different rhythm. Students thinned out for the break, but I saw everything clearer than ever. Each empty bench, each late-lit window, each Christmas song echoing from somewhere in the cold wind. And Holden didn't disappear. He didn't text relentlessly, didn't show up unexpectedly like an emotional test. Holden just sent one message every morning. "Have a peaceful day, Frank." No emojis. No flowery words. Just that. Enough to let me know he was there. 3 days before Christmas, I ran into Holden in the library. I was searching for materials for my final essay when I saw him in the engineering section, a very familiar Holden, but also very different. He looked up when he saw me, his eyes lighting up, then quickly softening, as if reminding himself not to get too close. "Hi," he said.
Iraplia.
We sat at the same table, not touching, not mentioning the ring, just reading together, taking notes, sharing a comfortable silence. That was what I missed most about Holden, the feeling of being with him without needing to say anything. "Do you want to go see the Christmas lights tomorrow night?" Holden asked as we packed up our books. "If you're not busy." I thought for a moment, then nodded. That evening, we walked around the neighborhood near campus, where wooden houses were decked with brilliant lights. The smell of baked goods filled the air. Some family was laughing inside a brightly lit window. I saw Holden staring at the scene longer than usual. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "About how I once thought I'd have a very different life," he said, and then realized different doesn't mean bad. I looked at him. "Are you scared?" Holden smiled softly. "Yes, but not as scared as losing you again. Those words didn't melt me, but they lingered. On Christmas Eve, I went back to my small apartment near campus. I'd gotten used to spending the holiday alone. I was cooking a simple dinner when there was a knock at the door. I knew who it was, though my heart still raced when I opened it. Holden stood there holding a paper bag. "I didn't mean to bother you," he said. "Just apple pie. You used to like it." I let him in. We ate pie, drank tea, listened to Christmas music. Not the ones I hated from last year, but slow, warm melodies. Holden talked about his semester away, about nights he missed me so much he couldn't sleep. I talked about my writings, about how much stronger I'd become. When the clock struck 12, snow fell again. Holden stood by the window. "Frank," he said without turning, "I know I can't ask you to trust me right away, but I want you to know, I'm building a future, and if you want, I want you in it. One step at a time." I stepped closer, not touching, just standing beside. "I'm still scared," I admitted. "Scared that one day you'll leave again." Holden turned to me. "If that happens," he said, "I won't let you wonder why." I looked at him for a long time. Then, for the first time in a year, I rested my head on Holden's shoulder. Not a promise, but permission. Outside, Christmas was unfolding. And in that small room, I realized, some wounds don't disappear, but they can learn to coexist with hope. After that Christmas night, things between Holden and me didn't have a clear name. We weren't back together, nor just friends. We existed in a limbo, where every step forward had to be considered, where emotions were no longer allowed to outrun reason. But one thing was different from last year. Holden stayed. He drove me to class on mornings with heavy snow, patiently waiting while I locked the door even though I always took too long. He sat in the back row when I TA'd, pretending to read materials but really watching me teach. And on late evenings when I wrote until my eyes ached, Holden made tea for me, the right temperature without asking. One evening, as we sat on the living room floor, backs against the sofa, I asked what had been on my mind for days. "What if I say no?" I asked. "Not now, but forever." Holden didn't answer right away. He stared into the space ahead, as if envisioning a painful but necessary future. "Then I'll still be here," he said, "as the one who loves you, even if not as a husband." That answer choked me up, not because it was romantic, but because it was unconditional. We started talking about the hard things, about how Holden had once hated himself for hiding me from his family, about my fear that I'd always be the one who loved more. Some conversations ended in heavy silence. Others ended with Holden holding my hand tight, as if afraid I'd vanish. One evening near New Year's, I went with Holden back to the wooden bridge by Lake Mendota. The snow had melted a bit, revealing the dull gray ice beneath. "Last year," I said, "this place was when my heart broke a second time." Holden nodded. "I know. I don't want this place to become a promise," I continued. "I want it to just be an honest memory." Holden turned to me. "Then let me stand here, not proposing, not promising. Just as Holden." I smiled, and this time the smile didn't hurt. That night, as we returned to my apartment, snow started falling again. Holden stood at the door, hand on the knob, then paused. "Frank," he said, "I still carry the ring." I nodded. "I know, but I don't want it to be what scares you," he continued. "If one day you say you're ready, I'll open the box. If not, it can stay put." I stepped forward, placing my hand on his cheek. The gesture made us both freeze, not because it was unfamiliar, but because it had been so long. "I haven't said yes," I whispered, "but I'm learning to trust again." Holden closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to mine. "That's enough." When he left, I stood by the window for a long time. I thought about a year ago about the pain I'd thought was the end. And I realized, if Holden hadn't come back, I'd still live. But because he came back the right way, I'd given myself a chance to hope. I didn't know what my answer would be, but for the first time I wasn't afraid of the question anymore. New Year's Eve arrived in silence, no fireworks, no parties. I was in my small apartment, finishing the last lines of an essay I'd procrastinated all week. Outside the window, snow fell slowly, flake by flake, as if time was learning to tread lightly too. My phone buzzed.
Holden, I'm downstairs.
No need to open if you don't want. I just want to stand here for a bit. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I put on my coat and went down. Holden stood under the bare tree in front of the building, bringing nothing but himself. No ring.
No flowers.
Just Holden as he'd promised. Happy New Year, he said.
Iraplia.
We stood side by side, our breaths forming thin clouds in the cold air. No one counted down. No one talked about the future. But something was gradually forming between us. Not rushed, not noisy. Frank, Holden spoke up. I'll move back to the old dorm after graduation. Near campus. Near you. Not for a proposal. Just because I want to build a real life, no running away. I nodded. I know. And if one day, he continued, you look at me and think, okay, I can, then I'll be here. If not, I'll still be grateful for loving you this way. Those words didn't tighten my heart. They eased it. I thought about last Christmas, about the pain that seemed incurable. And I thought about this Christmas, about someone returning, not to reclaim what was lost, but to ask permission to start over from the truth. Holden, I said. He turned to me, waiting, but not hoping too much. I'm not ready to marry, I said. Not now. He nodded. No disappointment. No crumbling. But, I continued, I'm ready to love again, slowly. And if one day I say yes, I want it to be because I'm not afraid anymore. Holden smiled, the most relieved smile I'd ever seen on his face. That's more than I dared hope, he said. I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around Holden. Not the hug of someone afraid to lose, but the hug of someone choosing to stay. When we let go, Holden didn't kneel, didn't open the ring box. He just held my hand, and I didn't pull away. A year ago, Christmas had shattered my heart. This year, Christmas brought Holden back, not to promise forever, but to ask me something more important. Could I trust one more time? And this time, my answer was no longer silence.